My boss fired me because shouldn't pay a woman that much. But when there's an error, we can get 3 real junior engineers for your salary? He smirked during my termination meeting. Nothing personal, just cost cutting. My name is Elena Valdez, 38 years old, lead systems engineer at Horizon Property Management for 10 years. I'd built their entire infrastructure from scratch, architected every expansion, and kept everything running so smoothly that the executives forgot how much the company depended on me until they decided they couldn't afford me anymore. I sat across from Nathan Parker, the new chief technology officer who'd been with the company for all of 6 months. He was 42, wore designer glasses that cost more than my monthly car payment, and had an MBA from a school he mentioned in every conversation. The kind of man who used phrases like synergistic opportunities and leveraging core competencies when he really meant, I have no idea what I'm talking about. Elena, he said, leaning back in his chair like he was about to offer me life advice instead of ending my career. You've been a valuable asset, but your compensation package is problematic. He slid a termination agreement across his glass desk. 3 months severance. Very generous. I glanced at the paper. 10 years reduced to 3 months in a non-disclosure agreement. I've reviewed your projects, he continued, and I think we can distribute your responsibilities among the team. Tucker and James can handle the back end, and we're bringing in some fresh talent from my old company. Tucker and James, both junior engineers I'd hired and trained myself. Both men, both making substantially less than me because they had substantially less experience. And fresh talent meant Nathan's former colleagues who would agree with whatever he said. The property management platform I designed runs the entire company, I said evenly. The codebase is well documented, I'm sure. He interrupted, checking his Apple Watch. Look, no one's irreplaceable. Elena, even you, that's just business. I signed the papers without argument. 10 years had taught me when to speak and when to listen. This was a time to listen, not to Nathan, but to my instincts telling me that sometimes the best response is no response at all. As security escorted me to clean out my desk, I passed the engineering department where I'd spent a decade of my life. Through the glass walls, I could see Tucker and James glancing away awkwardly. My team, people I'd mentored for years, kept their heads down, afraid to make eye contact. Only Priya, a brilliant developer I'd hired 3 years ago, dared to stand and give me a quick hug. This is wrong, she whispered. We all know it. I squeezed her hand. Document everything, I whispered back. It wasn't until I reached my car, box of personal items in the passenger seat, that I allowed myself a single moment of weakness. 10 years. I joined Horizon when it managed 12 properties and built systems that now supported over 300. I'd worked weekends, holidays, taken calls at 3 a.m. when servers failed. I'd postponed starting a family. I'd missed my father's last birthday before he died because of an emergency system migration. And now I was too expensive. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I simply started my car and drove away from the gleaming glass building that had been my second home. As I turned onto the main road, my phone rang, a call from my direct line at Horizon. I declined it without looking, whatever fire they were facing. It wasn't my problem anymore. No apology needed. Nathan's education was just beginning, and I didn't need to be there to witness it. Education, after all, is an expensive thing, especially when it comes at the cost of someone who actually knows what they're doing. The calls started 4 days after my termination. The first one came while I was sitting in my home office, updating my resume and scanning job boards. My phone lit up with Horizon's main number. I let it go to voicemail. 20 minutes later, it rang again, then again. By the sixth call, curiosity got the better of me. Hello? Elena, thank God. It was Tucker, his voice tight with stress. We have a situation. I don't work there anymore. Tucker. I know, but his voice dropped to a whisper. The property management system is throwing errors we've never seen before. Tenant rent payments aren't processing correctly, and Nathan wants us to push an update to fix it by tomorrow. I suppressed a laugh. The payment processing system was built on a complex architecture that had evolved over a decade. Nathan wanting them to push an update overnight was like asking someone to perform heart surgery after watching a YouTube tutorial. Have you checked the documentation? I asked, already knowing the answer. What documentation? Tucker sounded genuinely confused. Nathan said you would have left everything we need. I leaned back in my chair, remembering all the times I'd tried to schedule documentation sprints only to have them deprioritized by management. All the times I'd stayed late working on system diagrams that no one ever looked at. All my requests for a junior engineer dedicated to maintaining technical documentation that were denied as not revenue generating. The documentation is in the team wiki, I said. You have access. There's nothing there, Tucker said. Just some outdated diagrams from 2019. I closed my eyes. Of course. The last time I'd updated the wiki was before Nathan arrived. After that, he'd shifted priorities so rapidly and demanded so many quick fixes that documentation became an afterthought. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, but I signed an exit agreement. I can't help. Elena, please, the entire rent collection system is down. People won't get paid. I'm sure the 3 junior engineers Nathan is hiring with my salary can figure it out, I replied, surprising myself with the edge in my voice. Good luck, Tucker. I hung up, feeling a mix of guilt and vindication. The system was complex, but not impossible to understand. With time and careful analysis, they could figure it out. But Nathan had never respected the complexity of what I'd built, had never valued the institutional knowledge I carried. Now they would learn the hard way. My phone rang again an hour later. This time, it was James. I didn't answer. Then Priya called from her personal number. It's bad, she said when I picked up. Nathan's threatening to fire people if we don't get the system back up by morning. He's called in some consultants from his old company, but they don't understand our architecture at all. I'm sorry, Priya, I really am. And I meant it, for her and the team, not for Nathan. But I can't help. I understand, she said quietly. I just wanted you to know what's happening. After we hung up, I sat staring at my computer screen, the job listings forgotten. Part of me wanted to swoop in and save the day. It's what I'd always done. Fixed problems, put out fires, worked impossible hours to keep things running. But another part, a part that had been silenced for too long, whispered, let them feel your absence. The next morning, my phone exploded with notifications. 3 voicemails from numbers I didn't recognize, multiple text messages from former colleagues, and an email from HR asking if I'd be willing to consult at a competitive hourly rate. I deleted the email without responding. By the weekend, the calls had evolved. Now it was Nathan himself, his voice tight with forced professionalism. Elena, this is Nathan Parker from Horizon. I hope you're doing well. We seem to be experiencing some technical difficulties that might benefit from your historical knowledge of the systems. If you could spare a few hours, we'd compensate you fairly for your time. Historical knowledge, as if what I possessed was ancient history rather than current expertise. As if what I'd built was a relic rather than the beating heart of their operation. I didn't call back. Monday morning, I had my first job interview with Meridian Technologies, a growing competitor to Horizon. The chief technology officer, Sanvi Mehta, had reached out directly after hearing about my departure from Horizon. Unlike Nathan, she had an actual technical background, 20 years as a software engineer before moving into leadership. Your reputation precedes you, she said as we sat in her office. The property management platform you built at Horizon is considered best in class. Was, I corrected. It was best in class when I maintained it. Saanvi smiled knowingly. Ah, so the rumors about system issues are true. I chose my words carefully, honoring my non-disclosure agreement. Let's just say that complex systems require proper maintenance and understanding. She nodded, then leaned forward. Elena, we're developing a next-generation property management platform. We need someone who understands the industry inside and out, someone who can architect something better than what's currently available. The position would be Director of Engineering, with a team of 15 reporting to you. Director of Engineering, a step up from my previous role, with more authority and presumably better compensation. I'd report to you, I asked. Directly to me, Saanvi confirmed. I need someone technical who can translate business requirements into architecture. Someone who won't be steamrolled by executives who don't understand what they're asking for. The interview lasted 3 hours. We talked architecture, technology stacks, team building. For the first time in months, I felt truly engaged, respected for my expertise, rather than seen as a line item on a budget. As I was leaving, my phone rang again, Horizon's number. Sanvi raised an eyebrow. Popular, aren't you? I declined the call with a smile. Just an ex who can't take a hint. She laughed. We've all had those. I'll have HR send an offer by the end of the week. I think you'll find the compensation respectful of your experience. As I walked to my car, my phone buzzed with a voicemail notification. Against my better judgment, I listened. Elena, this is Richard Hoffman, the CEO of Horizon, a man I'd spoken to maybe 3 times in 10 years. We have a situation that requires your immediate assistance. The property management system is experiencing critical failures, and we're unable to process transactions or generate reports for our clients. Nathan assures me this is a temporary setback, but we could use your expertise to expedite the resolution. Please call me directly. I saved the message, a small smile playing at my lips. So Nathan was assuring the CEO it was temporary. Was he interesting how my historical knowledge was suddenly critical after just 1 week? When I got home, I found an email from Priya sent to my personal account. Thought you might find this entertaining, was all she wrote, with an audio file attached. I hesitated before playing it. Priya wouldn't send me anything that would violate her employment terms. But still, the audio began with Nathan's voice, clearly stressed. What do you mean you can't restore from backup? The backups are automatic. Another voice. James, I thought, responded. Yes, but Elena maintained a custom backup verification system. The standard backups are failing integrity checks, and we don't know why. Jesus Christ, Nathan hissed. It's like she built this thing to break if she left. No, came Priya's calm voice. She built it to be maintained properly. We've been warning you for months that we need more documentation time. I don't need lectures from you, Nathan snapped. Just fix it, and somebody get Elena on the phone. Whatever she wants, double her rate, triple it. Just get her in here. The recording ended there. I played it twice more, each time focusing on Nathan's growing panic. I hadn't built the system to fail in my absence. I'd built it to be robust and reliable. But I'd also built it over 10 years, layer upon layer of complexity, each piece solving a specific business problem, without proper knowledge transfer, without respect for that complexity. Of course, it would eventually falter. My phone rang again. Horizon. Again, I didn't answer. Instead, I opened my laptop and began sketching ideas for Meridian's new property management system. This time, I'd build something even better, with proper documentation from the start, and I'd make sure no one person, not even me, was indispensable. Because that's what a good engineer does. They build systems that outlast them. 2 weeks later, I accepted Meridian's offer, Director of Engineering, with a 40% salary increase over what I'd made at Horizon, plus equity and a signing bonus. My first day was marked by a welcome breakfast with the entire engineering team and a one-on-one lunch with Sanvi. I've been following Horizon's situation, she mentioned as we sat at a local bistro. They're hemorrhaging clients. 3 major property management companies have already reached out to us about switching platforms. I took a sip of water, careful not to show too much satisfaction. Is that so? She nodded, studying me. They're claiming temporary technical difficulties, but industry word is their system is in shambles. Apparently, they're manually calculating rent for some properties and can't generate accurate financial reports. I made a non-committal sound. Part of me felt genuine sympathy for my former colleagues, still trapped there. Another part, a part I was still coming to terms with, felt a grim satisfaction. You're still getting calls from them, aren't you? Sanvi asked. I hesitated, then nodded, almost daily. Have you answered any? No. She smiled. Good. Let them solve their own problems. In the meantime, we have an opportunity to capture a significant market share if we can accelerate our platform development. The next month passed in a whirlwind of activity. I built my team, established development processes, and began architecting Meridian's next generation platform. Unlike at Horizon, where innovation had stagnated under Nathan's leadership, Sanvi encouraged creative thinking and proper engineering practices. Documentation wasn't an afterthought, it was a deliverable, with allocated time and resources. The calls from Horizon gradually decreased, though they never stopped entirely. Sometimes, late at night when I was working on particularly complex system designs, I'd wonder how they were managing. Had they figured out the integration issues with the payment processor? Had they discovered the backup verification system's configuration files? Were Tucker and James still there? Or had they become scapegoats for Nathan's mismanagement? Then I'd remember Nathan's smirk as he'd said, "We can get 3 junior engineers for your salary," and return to my work with renewed focus. 4 months after joining Meridian, Sanvi called me into her office. When I arrived, she wasn't alone. A man in his 60s with silver hair and an expensive suit sat across from her. "Elena, this is Martin Chen, our CEO," Sanvi introduced us. I shook his hand, surprised. Martin was somewhat of a legend in the property management industry, having built Meridian from nothing 20 years ago. He rarely involved himself in day-to-day operations anymore. "Elena," he said warmly, "Sanvi has been singing your praises. I understand your team is making remarkable progress on the new platform." "We are," I confirmed. "We're on track for a beta launch in 6 months." Martin nodded, exchanging a glance with Sanvi. "What would you say if we could accelerate that timeline?" I raised an eyebrow. "I'd say it depends on why and how. Rushing software development rarely ends well." He smiled, clearly pleased with my answer. "Fair enough. The why is straightforward. We have an acquisition opportunity. The how is where you come in." Saanvi slid a folder across the desk. Inside was a confidential acquisition proposal. The target company was immediately familiar: Horizon Property Management. My head snapped up. "You're buying Horizon." "We're considering it," Martin said carefully. "Their valuation has dropped significantly in recent months due to technical issues with their platform. Several key clients have already left, and more are threatening to follow." I flipped through the documents, scanning the financial details. Horizon's value had indeed plummeted. They were now available for barely more than their physical assets and client contracts were worth. "Their technology would be worthless to us," I said. "We're building something better from scratch." "True," Sanvi agreed, "but their client base isn't worthless. If we acquire them, we'd need to migrate their clients to our new platform as quickly as possible." "Which is why we're talking to you," Martin added. "You know their system better than anyone. You could help design the migration path, minimize client disruption." I sat back, thinking. "You know I built their system." Martin nodded. "We're aware. And you know why I left." "We've heard rumors," Sanvi said carefully. "Something about cost-cutting measures." I laughed softly. "That's one way to put it." I tapped the folder. "If you acquire Horizon, you'll also acquire their staff, including Nathan Parker." Martin and Sanvi exchanged another glance. "Actually," Martin said, "part of the acquisition would involve restructuring their technical leadership. Their system failures have not inspired confidence in the current CTO." "What role did you have in mind for me in this acquisition?" I asked, already suspecting the answer. "Integration director," Sanvi said. "You'd oversee the technical aspects of merging the companies, reporting directly to me. It would be a temporary role, 18 months at most, after which you'd return to leading our engineering department with an expanded team." Integration director, the person who would decide which systems lived, which died, and how the transition would happen. The person who would determine the technical direction of the merged company. The person who would be Nathan Parker's boss. I closed the folder and handed it back to Sanvi. "I need to think about it. There are complicated dynamics at play." Martin stood, buttoning his suit jacket. "Of course, this is still highly confidential. We're in early discussions. Take the weekend, and we can talk on Monday." After they left, I sat alone in Sanvi's office, staring out the window at the city skyline. The prospect of seeing Nathan again, of having authority over him, stirred complicated emotions, vindication, certainly, but also apprehension. I'd moved on. I was building something new, something better. Did I want to step back into that old environment? Even from a position of power? My phone buzzed, another call from Horizon, but this time from a number I recognized immediately. Richard Hoffman, the CEO. For the first time in months, I answered. Elena, he sounded surprised, as if he'd expected another rejection. Thank you for picking up. What can I do for you, Richard? He sighed heavily. I'll be direct. We're in trouble. Our system issues have cost us 3 major clients, and more are threatening to leave. Nathan assures me they're making progress, but, well, the progress isn't evident in our operations. I said nothing, waiting. I made a mistake, Richard continued. We made a mistake, letting you go. I was led to believe the transition would be seamless, that your role could be adequately covered by lower-cost resources. Lower-cost resources, not even engineers or people, just resources. Nathan was very convincing, I said, keeping my tone neutral. Yes, well, Richard cleared his throat. We'd like to offer you your position back, lead systems engineer, with a substantial increase in compensation, of course, and a seat on the technical leadership team. And Nathan, a pause. He would still be the CTO. So I would report to the man who fired me because I was too expensive as a woman in a technical role. I clarified. Another pause, longer this time. The decision to terminate your employment was a collective one, made by the executive team based on budget considerations. Coward. He couldn't even own the mistake. Richard, I said, softening my tone as if speaking to a child. We both know that's not accurate. Nathan decided I was expendable because he fundamentally underestimated both the complexity of the systems I built and my value to the company. He believed he could replace me with cheaper male engineers because he doesn't respect female technical expertise. And now you're calling because you've realized he was wrong. But you're still not willing to admit the real problem. Silence on the other end. If you want me back, I continued, it would be as CTO, with Nathan reporting to me if I decided to keep him at all. But that's irrelevant, because I'm not available. I've moved on to a company that values my expertise from the start, not just when systems are failing. Elena. Goodbye, Richard. Good luck with your technical difficulties. I hung up, a strange calm settling over me. 6 months ago, that call would have been validating, a chance to return triumphantly, to prove my worth. Now it felt like a step backward. On Monday morning, I met with Sanvi and Martin. I'll take the integration director role, I said, but with conditions. Sanvi raised an eyebrow. Let's hear them. First, I want complete autonomy in technical decision-making during the integration. Second, I want to bring 3 key people from my former team over immediately, before the acquisition is finalized. That could be legally complicated, Martin warned. They'll come if we offer them roles, I assured him. Priya Patel, for one. She's been keeping their systems on life support, and they don't appreciate her either. And third, Sanvi prompted. I smiled. Third, I want to be in the room when you tell Nathan Parker that not only is he not going to be CTO of the merged company, but he'll be reporting to me during the transition, if I decide to keep him at all. Martin chuckled. That's more personal than professional. It's both, I admitted. Nathan's technical leadership has been disastrous for Horizon because he doesn't respect expertise, particularly from women, if this acquisition goes through. The integration's success depends on establishing clear authority from day one. Sanvi studied me for a moment, then nodded. I don't see a problem with that condition, Martin. He shrugged. If we get to that point, you can be in the room. The acquisition process moved quickly. Horizon, desperate to stop their financial bleeding, agreed to terms that would have been unthinkable 6 months earlier. Within weeks, the framework of a deal was in place, pending due diligence and board approvals. As promised, we extended offers to Priya and 2 other key engineers from my former team. All 3 accepted within days, eager to escape the sinking ship Horizon had become. How bad is it? I asked Priya on her first day at Meridian. She shook her head. Worse than you can imagine. They're running on a patchwork of emergency fixes. Half the reporting features don't work. They've had to hire 10 temporary workers just to manually process transactions that the system should handle automatically. And Nathan, Priya's expression darkened. Still there, still blaming everyone but himself. Last week, he told the team that if Elena had built the system properly, with adequate documentation, we wouldn't be in this mess. I laughed. Adequate documentation that he repeatedly refused to allocate time for. Exactly, Priya said. No one believes him anymore. Though everyone knows the truth, that he drove out the one person who understood how everything worked because he couldn't stand reporting to a woman who was smarter than him. Exactly, Priya said. No one believes him anymore. Though everyone knows the truth, that he drove out the one person who understood how everything worked because he couldn't stand reporting to a woman who was smarter than him. The day finally came when the acquisition was announced publicly. Meridian's stock rose. Horizon's shareholders breathed a sigh of relief at being rescued from what had become a rapidly depreciating investment. As promised, I was in the room when Richard Hoffman and Martin Chen gathered Horizon's executive team to announce the post-acquisition structure. I sat quietly to the side as Martin outlined which executives would stay, which would go, and which roles would change. Nathan sat rigid in his chair, his expression darkening, as he realized he was not among those being offered leadership positions in the merged company. The technical integration, Martin explained, will be led by Meridian's integration director, who will make all decisions regarding systems, processes, and technical personnel during the transition period. And who is this integration director? Nathan asked, his voice tight. Martin gestured to me. I believe you already know Elena Valdez. Martin gestured to me. I believe you already know Elena Valdez. The room went silent. Nathan's face flushed deep red, his jaw clenching visibly. This is a joke, he said finally. Not at all, Martin replied smoothly. Ms. Valdez built Horizon's core systems and now leads development of Meridian's next-generation platform. There's no one better qualified to manage the technical integration. Nathan turned to Richard, appealing to their shared history. Richard, you can't be serious. She's been gone for months. She has no idea what changes we've made. Richard wouldn't meet his eyes. The board has approved this structure. Nathan, Meridian's conditions were clear. Nathan turned to me then, his expression a mixture of anger and disbelief. You orchestrated this, didn't you? This whole acquisition, it's your revenge. I smiled calmly, speaking for the first time since the meeting began. Nathan, not everything is about you. This acquisition makes perfect business sense for both companies. Horizon gets financial stability, and Meridian gets an expanded client base. The fact that you're now reporting to me is just, what did you call it? Nothing personal, just business. A few people around the table suppressed smiles. Nathan opened his mouth to respond, then closed it, seeming to realize that any outburst would only damage his already precarious position. If there are no other questions, Martin continued, we'll proceed with the department-level announcements this afternoon. Thank you for your attention. As the executives filed out, Nathan remained seated, staring at the table. I gathered my papers and prepared to leave, but paused at the door, turning back to him. Nathan, I said quietly, I'll need your comprehensive assessment of the current system state on my desk by tomorrow morning. Every issue, every workaround, every patch. Complete honesty, no minimizing the problems. He looked up, his expression unreadable. And if I refuse, then you'll make my first personnel decision very easy. I replied, but I'd rather not start that way. You have technical skills that could be valuable during this transition. If you can set your ego aside and focus on the work. You're enjoying this, he muttered. No, I said truthfully. I would have preferred that none of this happened, that you had respected my expertise from the beginning, that you had understood the value of what I built and maintained. We could have done great things together if you hadn't been so threatened by reporting to a woman. I left him there, alone with that truth. The integration period was challenging, but productive. Nathan delivered the assessment I requested. Incomplete, but a start, within weeks, with proper leadership and resources. We stabilized Horizon's core systems enough to begin planning the migration to Meridian's new platform. True to my word, I kept Nathan on the team, but in a narrowly defined role where his technical skills could be useful, but his management style couldn't cause damage. He was professional, if cold, working efficiently but speaking to me only when necessary. I heard through office gossip that he was already interviewing elsewhere, looking for another CTO position. 6 months into the integration, our beta launch of the new platform was a resounding success. We migrated the first group of Horizon clients seamlessly, with no disruption to their operations. The platform incorporated the best elements of both systems, with modern architecture, comprehensive documentation, and proper failover protocols. Nathan submitted his resignation the following week, accepting a CTO position at a smaller competitor. I wished him well with genuine professionalism. His departure felt less like victory and more like the natural conclusion to a chapter that had run its course. On his last day, he stopped by my office, looking uncomfortable but determined. "I've completed the knowledge transfer for my team," he said formally. "All documentation has been updated per your requirements." "Thank you, Nathan. I appreciate your professionalism during this transition." He hesitated, then said, "I was wrong about you, about the systems you built. I didn't understand their complexity or value until they started failing." It wasn't quite an apology for his sexism or poor judgment, but it was an acknowledgement of his mistake. I nodded, accepting it for what it was. "Learn from it," I said simply. "Engineering isn't about ego or gender. It's about building things that work, things that last. And sometimes the most valuable asset is the person whose knowledge you can't replace with 3 junior engineers, regardless of their gender." He gave a short nod and left. I doubted he'd fully internalize the lesson, but perhaps the experience had cracked his preconceptions just enough to let some light in. A year later, the integration was complete. The new platform was fully operational, supporting all of Meridian's original clients plus the migrated Horizon clients. With room for growth, I returned to my role as Director of Engineering, now leading a team 3 times the size of my original group. Saanvi stopped by my office late one evening as I was finishing up documentation for a new feature. "Still here?" she asked. "You know you don't have to document everything yourself anymore. You have a team for that." I smiled, saving my work. Old habits. But you're right. I've allocated proper time and resources for documentation in the sprint planning. I'm just reviewing. She sat down across from me. "The board approved your promotion today, Executive VP of Technology, effective next month." I blinked in surprise. "That's your job." "Was my job," she corrected. "I'm moving up too. CEO in waiting. Martin's retiring next year." "Saanvi, that's amazing. Congratulations." "You too," she said, smiling. "You've earned it. What you accomplished with the integration was remarkable, not just technically, but culturally. You could have turned it into a revenge story, but you made it about building something better instead." I considered her words. It wasn't about revenge. Not in the end. It was about building systems and teams that last. Something Nathan never understood. "Speaking of Nathan," Saanvi said, "heard he's been demoted at Clarity Tech. Something about system failures and budget overruns." I shook my head. Lessons take longer to learn than others. Later that night, as I was leaving the office, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Congratulations on the promotion, well deserved, and NP." I stared at it for a moment, surprised that he'd heard so quickly, and even more surprised that he'd reached out. Perhaps some lessons eventually sink in after all. I typed a simple reply, "Thank you, build things that last." Build things that last. As I drove home, I reflected on the journey of the past 18 months. What had started as an unfair termination had led to something better than I could have imagined. Not just a higher position or better salary, but the opportunity to build systems and teams with integrity, to create technology that reflected my values of stability and sustainability. Nathan had been wrong about so many things, but especially his core assumption that experience could be easily replaced, that women in tech were somehow worth less than their male counterparts. In the end, my worth hadn't been determined by his perception, but by what I built, what I knew, and what I stood for. The next morning, I arrived early to find Priya already at her desk, now the technical lead for our core platform team. "You're here early," I observed. She looked up with a smile. Documenting the new authentication service before the team meeting. Wanted to make sure it was solid. I nodded approvingly. Build things that last. I nodded approvingly. Build things that last. That's the plan, she agreed. Always.